Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my ranking for all 10 Best Picture nominees for this year's Oscars. Alright, so it is now time. The Academy Awards, or the Oscars, are taking place later tonight on the day that I'm uploading this. So yeah, really excited for the ceremony, of course, and this will be now, I believe, the third year in a row. Of course, I've been watching a lot of the Best Picture nominees, but I think this is the third year in a row that I've watched all of the nominees before the ceremony actually occurred, and then have done a ranking video ranking all of them. So we did it in 2020, and then we did one last year. Last year, I actually reviewed all of the nominated movies in separate kind of long-form spoiler reviews, which I really enjoyed doing. This year, I wasn't as invested in a lot of these films, and so that's just something I didn't really do. But I did for sure want to come on and do a bit of a ranking video here where I can share some of my thoughts, at least in you know, a little kind of a reduced time, but still share some of my thoughts on some of these films. But overall, I think I really agree with kind of the consensus that this year's films were just not on the same level to me as even last year, but definitely not 2020, or I guess technically the 2019 films. Within those, I had 3 or 4 that I thought were, you know, some of the best of the decade, right? With Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit, Parasite in particular, those 3 for me were all best of the decade. So those are just really great films. Last year, a couple that I really enjoyed, Minari, Sound of Metal, The Father, but none of those were kind of like 5 out of 5 movies. This year, I would take, you know, all of the ones I just named from last year over any of the ones this year. So that's just how I feel. And I just wanted to get that out there before we jump into the ranking. So even my number 1 here is not a movie that I really consider to be, you know, a really top tier movie for me, at least. But I know a lot of people do like some of these films, and I don't want to kind of take away from that either. But anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on these films. If you've seen all of them, what was your ranking for these films? If you want to share, or if you've just seen some of them, maybe your thoughts on some of them, some you liked or some you didn't like. Anything like that would be great to hear from you guys. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. But yeah, so without any further ado, we'll just go one by one here. So we'll go from number 10 to 1. And then I'll also give my ratings for each film out of 5. So that kind of gives a little bit more context to the overall ranking there. So anyways, with all that being said, let's get in now to the ranking of all 10 Best Picture nominees for this year's Oscars. Alright, so at number 10 to start off this list, or technically the worst movie then on this list, is going to be Don't Look Up. So this one I gave a 2.5 out of 5, and like I said, I'll be giving a rating for these films, and of course some of them are going to have the same ratings, so technically, you know, some of them would be kind of a higher 3 or a lower 3, for example, in some cases, but this is the only one that's out of the 3 and up territory for me, yeah, it's at 2.5, so going into this film, I will admit that my expectations were pretty low. Of course, I am a huge Adam McKay fan. The Big Short is honestly probably one of my favorite movies, definitely of the 2010s kind of decade, but maybe of all time. Really, really love that film. And of course, what he kind of brought that approach to, of course, Succession, which is one of my favorite shows on the air right now, and maybe of all time in that conversation. So anyways, really big Adam McKay fan, but going into this and all the stuff I heard about the movie, and I only saw this about 4 days ago, everything I heard about the movie going in, I was like, okay, I'm not sure that I'm going to like this, and I just thought this was a messy overall film, to me. Parts of this felt like a kind of a bunch of comedy sketches kind of stitched together, trying to kind of fit into this same plot that's trying to go through the movie. So to me, that was just like the main thing that really kind of made me put it at last place. Because a lot of these other films have, you know, drawbacks and things that I just really didn't work for me and that kind of thing. But this one, to me, just objectively speaking, is just kind of messy. Just overall, I think, and the main reason for why it is so messy is because there's just not enough restraints on Adam McKay here at Netflix, and we've heard this, and it's been like usually a positive, I guess, or at least it's thought to be a positive when Netflix is giving directors like Adam McKay, but even more like high-profile ones like even David Fincher with Mank last year, giving them a lot of freedom, right? Creative freedom to do kind of what they want. But to me, I think that was like the worst possible thing that Adam McKay could have got for this film, because it's just way too over the top. I mean, way too over the top. I even like the very beginning of the film, where the first couple sequences where you have, I really liked the stuff where they do, and they do this in The Big Short too, which really works well, in my opinion, but what they do, they kind of bring up this like badge at the beginning of this one, and they say, you know, oh yes, this department actually does exist, or something like that. And I really like that. But then after that, it just went so downhill. The editing is so quick and just cuts everything off way before it should end. Like every scene just seems like we're in the middle of the scene and then we cut to the next one, and then there's like pictures of nature in the middle of like kind of tense sequences, and just really pulls you out of that. So again, I get the ambition here, you know, the creative freedom that Adam McKay has now, and I will say the editing is good from that standpoint. I don't really blame the editor. I don't think it's low quality editing, but just the way that it's all done and the approach here, to me, just doesn't work at all. And again, like, I do think that there were some really funny moments, though. I will say I did laugh out loud quite a few times, mainly because of Jonah Hill. I thought he was the best part of this film. Even Leonardo DiCaprio I thought was really good too, and kind of more of a comedic way of this, and kind of also being, I guess, kind of like the dumb character, I guess, or kind of being disconnected from like the social media trends, and the way he kind of read stuff was really funny in that character. Jennifer Lawrence I thought was also good. I heard a lot of people say that they didn't actually really like her in the film, but I actually thought she was pretty good. Again, some really funny moments from her, and then also Meryl Streep was really funny as the president. I thought that was an interesting character for her, and yeah, so I thought, again, some funny moments, but just overall as a film, not great. And again, I think maybe even doing like a string of comedy sketches for these kind of different situations that McKay thinks of here would have actually been really funny just on their own. And they do work that way in the film. Like, they don't really feel connected at all times. And so again, that's just why it's so messy, and that's why it just doesn't go together. I do, again, like the messaging of the whole thing obviously is very obvious, very on the nose, which again, like, wasn't even my main issue with the film, which I maybe thought it would be. It was more just that I didn't think it was a well-made film. I didn't think it was put together very well. So anyways, that's just kind of my thoughts there on Don't Look Up at number 10. Like I said, yeah, one of the funnier movies, though, on this list for sure, and some of the most laughs I probably had. But that's just what it is, and that's why it is number 10 then to start off this list. Alright, so at number 9 then, next on the list, is going to be Belfast. And this one I gave a 3 out of 5, so a bit of a step up from Don't Look Up, but as I said, a lot of these next films are all going to be rated 3 out of 5, so, you know, obviously some of them are lower 3s and higher 3s, and this one is probably the lowest 3 then of these films. So to me, this is, from an objective standpoint, just another messy film, I would say. To me, I thought there was about 3 or 4 different storylines or plot points, whatever you want to call them or refer to them as, that could have all been in a separate film themselves. And I kind of get it, because it is Kenneth Branagh, a semi-autobiographical film that he's made, and trying to kind of just depict this experience that he had, you know, growing up in Belfast. and all these things that were, influencing him and around him. But I thought there was just too much all meshed into this one film, and it didn't have a kind of a clear, cohesive kind of story or through line through the whole thing, with all these kind of jumbled, all these different things kind of adding up into one. And one of them I really enjoyed was the kind of passion for filmmaking. Going to see films with the grandma. Judi Dench's character there. And I really like this as well. One of my favorite scenes of the whole film by far is the whole standoff towards the end of the film, when they have, I believe it's his father, Jamie Dornan, who's held at gunpoint, or somebody's held at gunpoint there in the alley. I did watch this one a few months ago, but so one of them is held at gunpoint in this alley, and then they start playing the High Noon song from that movie. And of course we know that, the child had seen the movie, I believe in a previous scene in the film. And so it's kind of this way of, as a child's perspective, of seeing this kind of very real shootout where someone could actually die. But in his mind, he's kind of picturing this film of High Noon and that whole dynamic. And I thought that was really charming, and I thought it really worked well. And so I really liked that aspect of the film, but that was just one small part. A lot of this was dominated by the protests that were going on. Then we had another storyline of this girl who was trying to get him involved in crime and trying to steal stuff from stores. And then, of course, we have, the family moving and him not wanting to leave and him maybe wanting to leave. And, there was just so much wrapped up in this story where, again, if you made the whole film about his passion for filmmaking, this little kid. Of course, we know that, obviously that influenced Branagh to go ahead and have this amazing filmmaking career. I think that would have been a really good film, and really would have felt a little tighter. Probably would have been a lot higher on this list for me. But it doesn't really do that. It's also about the protests and all this stuff, which, again, the protests, that also would have been a good concept for a film and would have worked well with the kind of a children's or child's perspective on that. But to me, that's just not fleshed out enough to really be fully realized and something that you were really invested in. So anyways, those are just kind of my thoughts on kind of the overall structure of the film. I thought Katrina Balfe was really great in this one, really a standout. I also really like Kieran Hines as well. A little biased because he is really one of my favorite actors. Some of the TV stuff I've seen him in recently, The Terror a couple years ago, I thought he was just fantastic in. So I'm really happy that he got the Oscar nomination for this, and I think he's been deserving for a while. So it's great to see him, and big, huge snub for Katrina Balfe. Judi Dench getting in over her is disgusting, really. She was really great and definitely a standout. I thought Jamie Dornan is a little overrated. I don't think he should have been in anywhere near the conversation for Oscars for his role, but it was also really not his fault, because, again, that character of the dad, I don't think that whole dynamic was really fleshed out as far as it could have been. So, I did say, or I did kind of think that there were some good laughs throughout this one. I will, admit that I did laugh a few times, and it was a little charming, especially the kind of back and forth with the girl and Jude Hill's character, the boy. I thought those were some really kind of charming moments, but just again, it's just felt so messy that, again, if maybe those charming moments and it was all just about the relationship with him and the girl, maybe that would have been also a better film. And some of the parts I liked there, but just not enough of that. So, and also the ending I thought was really frustrating. Just such a straightforward, conventional ending to basically all of it. It's so neat and tidy. They just leave the grandma there, which is like kind of an emotional ending, but really didn't hit me at all. So yeah, just a disappointing way to wrap up what to me was kind of a big disappointment overall. So anyways, that is why Belfast is at number 9 on my list. Alright, so next on my list then at number 8, we have West Side Story. And this one I also gave a 3 out of 5, but again, a little bit higher than Belfast. And I will say quite a bit of a jump, I guess, right, from Belfast and Don't Look Up, which to me are just objectively not the best made films, I guess. And these next few kind of fall into more of the subjective territory of just things that I saw that I really didn't like, or things that I had problems with. So anyways, West Side Story then at number 8. So from a technical aspect, I can't deny how impressive this film is. The choreography, anything visual in this movie, the costumes, the makeup, production design, cinematography, the direction choices from Spielberg. I will say I also think this film has the best opening sequence or shot, if you will, of any of the films on this list. I will say that. It is such a great tracking shot that we have, and obviously the set design it really kind of captures the period and just the environment that this movie is taking place in, and this tracking shot just takes you through it all and then introduces you to the characters of I guess the Jets group, right? So really great stuff all the way around in that aspect. The cinematography as well. Almost every single frame of this film is just so pleasing to the eye. It really is. Every single, even just like the kind of scenes that you wouldn't think would be, that like well lit or look that good, they do. So again, production design deserves a lot of credit for that as well. But really great cinematography, just the lighting of everything, and just the color as well with everything in here. It's just really, really great. So all of that, that's like kind of all my praise, though, unfortunately, for this film. And I will be honest. I mean, this one I only watched a couple nights ago. This was not one I was looking forward to. I haven't seen the original, and I have no interest in seeing it. I really didn't have much interest in seeing this. And yeah, to be honest, it just really didn't exceed any of my expectations that were already pretty low. The story and the characters here are paper thin. I mean, the love story here between the two main characters, they meet the night before, and all of a sudden they're in love. And the whole thing takes place in like 2 days, right? And they fall in love and have this huge romance and everything. And it's just so hard to believe. I was just completely taken out of that. And also, I think Ansel Elgort was, aside from any of the controversy, anything like that, I don't really care about that while judging the film. But he was just miscast here to me. I didn't think he had any sort of charisma, and I don't really blame him because, he's not like he's in Baby Driver, and he's perfect for that because he doesn't have much charisma. He's kind of a quiet, shy, kind of in the background kind of character, but that works so well in Baby Driver. He was so great in that. But to have him in this and being kind of this, you need this charisma and you really kind of want to root for him, and I didn't get that at all. So I'm not sure why, Spielberg cast him in this role. Maybe because I guess of his looks. I thought his singing was actually pretty impressive, better than what I thought it might be. But yeah, I just think he was completely miscast here. So again, that kind of added to how hard it was for me to buy in. Ariana DeBose is great. She's going to win supporting actress, and I think she deserves it. I think she does the most here as well. The dancing, singing, a lot of crying, kind of emotional scenes as well. So I think she was great. She definitely deserves that. And the music really didn't stand out to me at all either. And I know maybe I'm in the minority here as well. A lot of people really enjoy this one. So not trying to take away from those people or if you enjoy it and all that. But yeah, just really did not stand out to me. Didn't find myself singing any of the songs after the movie or having it in my head, anything like that. So anyways, that's just me. So it's kind of a two-sided coin for me with this film in that, yeah, from a technical aspect, it's really, really impressive. And especially for Spielberg, to be in his 70s now and still turning out some really creative, or still making creative choices with these films, like this one. He deserves a lot of credit. Of course, probably the best director of all time, of course. At least from kind of an objective standpoint of all the stuff he's done. But, yeah, really impressive from the technical side of things. But otherwise, to me, I just don't see it. I don't connect with it at all. And so, yeah, that's why it's at number 8 on this list of my ranking. All right. So next, then at number 7, we have King Richard, and this one I also gave a 3 out of 5, but obviously a little bit higher than the last couple films. So I think Will Smith gives a great performance in this film, and I've seen some people, say that he's a little overrated, or they might even take Benedict Cumberbatch or somebody else over him in this one, but I really thought he was great, and I think he definitely deserves to win the Oscar here. I have seen him, of course, in Pursuit of Happiness, and I was trying to think back, and the last time I've seen that film is maybe 5 years ago or something, like really quite a while ago. So I can't really remember. I do remember he had a lot of emotional moments, a very emotional movie, of course. So, anyways, I was trying to think back whether or not he's better in that than he is in this. And to be honest, I can't remember. But anyways, he is great in this, and it is great to see that he's going to win the Oscar for Best Actor. Now, I will say he did a great job, but I also think that his character could have had a little bit more depth and a little bit more kind of, I guess, an explanation or kind of exposing his motivations a little bit more actually throughout the film. So maybe I guess he was good with what he was given, I would say. Because a lot of the time in the film, he kind of just is how he is. And we really don't learn a lot of his background except for in his exposition lines and the way that he tells Serena and Venus about his background, the way he tells his wife, and then that scene with his wife and him in the kitchen, which is kind of like the big climax or the big emotional, hard-hitting scene of the film. But most of that is exposition, and it's just kind of telling us his past and, that he has other children with another woman. That's the first time we heard about that at all in the film, and it was just through this exposition-y argument that they had. So to me, I thought they could have fleshed that actually a little bit more and given us some more of his background. I don't necessarily, want to see flashbacks. That kind of seems cliche. But maybe that might have been a little bit better in adding a little bit more depth to that character. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Will Smith is so great that you don't need that depth to kind of, really be engaged and be connected to that character at the end of the day. But I just think that would have improved it even more. So to me, I think this is a little bit more than a typical sports biopic. If not only just that our main focus in the film is actually not the athlete or not kind of the subject of the sport or the success, which that is basically Venus Williams in the film. Serena actually doesn't attain success or kind of reach that mark in this film, or at least at the ending of this film, even though now, of course, Serena has kind of surpassed Venus in that, in the tennis world and been more successful. But of course, at the beginning, Venus was considered the better sister, I guess, if you will, or just kind of the better player. And that's the way we kind of rule in this film. But anyways, so of course, Richard Williams, right, is not the athlete or not the one who achieves success. And so just in that way of covering kind of a different look at this sports biopic thing, and covering our main character isn't necessarily the athlete, but we also do see Venus and we see this succeed, the kind of reaching the top, kind of conquering adversity, that whole thing. We see that story play out, but it's also kind of parallel to, of course, the Richard Williams story. And that's something I liked quite a bit with this one. I will say the story seemed a little repetitive, and I think the first half could have been cut down a little bit. I thought just the stuff with him getting in trouble in the neighborhood with other teenage guys, I thought that stuff was just a little repetitive. Maybe the first scene would have been good, and I just thought they took it a little too far with that. I kind of got what they were going for. I got that it was an issue and that he was kind of trying to stand up for his daughters, confront, I guess, a little bit of his past with that, but I just thought it was a little repetitive. And for this movie being 2.5 hours, I felt like you maybe could have cut some things from that first half, and maybe from the second half too. I thought it just could have been shorter in general, though I will say it really did fly by. I will say that. Like, it was fast-paced, and you really were kind of engaged as it was going. But just in hindsight, yeah, I think it was a little long for what it had to be. But yeah, I also thought there was just some really charming moments with the family dynamic, with all the sisters. I thought a lot of those scenes were really great. Some of the scenes where they're watching Cinderella, the movie, together. all that stuff. I thought all the young actresses did a really great job. Really great job in this one and what they were trying to do here, and the dynamic with Anjanou Ellis, Will Smith, and all the girls just really played well. Really great. So loved all that stuff as well. One last comment I will say is that Anjanou Ellis in this film, I think she's good, but I think she's ultimately overrated here. For some people think that she should win the award. I'm just not sure. I think maybe she does deserve the nomination, but definitely not the winning conversation. I think she has that one scene, the kind of the kitchen scene that everyone talks about. Even that scene, to me, I thought the dialogue was a little clunky and, like I said, exposition-y. And so to me, I really didn't see an Oscar-winning worthy performance from Ellis in that scene. So anyways, that's just me. I just wanted to kind of, make a bit of a controversial claim there, but that was just my thought. I think this movie is really Will Smith, and that's about as far as it goes for the acting. But anyways, those are my thoughts then on King Richard at number 7. All right, so next then at number 6 on the list is going to be Coda. This one I also then gave a 3 out of 5, but definitely a very high 3, very close to a 3.5, which the next few films are rated for me. This one definitely kind of, I guess it's in the bottom 5, but definitely the top out of these bottom 5 to me. It really did stand out there. So ultimately, a fairly cliche story here, right? Let's kind of be honest here. Pretty cliche story and very predictable, right? A lot of the kind of beats you can predict if you've seen these types of movies before. You know that she's going to get into the college at the end of the film, for example. You know that she's going to nail that audition. You know that she's going to pursue the music route, even though she says that she's going to stay home. So anyways, just a lot of these kind of decisions and plot points in the film. Yeah, it's pretty predictable, and they are pretty cliche, especially the kind of relationship she develops with the boy. Yeah, just very surface level stuff for sure. However, saying all of that, you can't deny how charming and just universal this film really is. Out of all these nominees, and of course there's talk about it possibly winning Best Picture tonight at the Oscars, which is crazy to think. It's such a kind of a small film as well, while up against these kind of bigger ones. But it really is the most universal out of any of these films on this list, I think. It's funny. It's funny. I found myself laughing out loud at a few points in the film. It's kind of emotional, though I didn't connect as much to those moments, but I will say there are some emotional moments in there. And of course, the main character being a coda, being a child of deaf adults, definitely adds some nuance to the story, right? Because, I mean, yeah, if that wasn't an aspect of this film, I don't think this would be anywhere near the Oscars conversation, because without that bit of nuance, it would just be way too cliche and way too kind of run-of-the-mill. So, of course, it adds that nuance, but like I said, it's still so relatable and so universal. Even if you don't grow up as a child of deaf adults, of course, which I'd say it's pretty rare, right, for the majority of audience or majority of viewers of the film, you can still connect to almost everything in this film, as the child or even as the parents or even a sibling of that child who's kind of, torn between their passion, supporting their family. So to me, you can take the kind of deaf element and that kind of aspect of the film, which is obviously dominates this film. But I would say you could even take that out, and still, again, this film would definitely work and still be very relatable for a lot of people. So to me, that's kind of what I just got out of it, is that it's just so charming and so kind of universally appealing that it's hard to not like it. You know what I mean? And again, I completely acknowledge that it is cliche and predictable, but yeah, I just couldn't get past these elements of it, and how kind of charmed, I guess, I was with some elements. Of course, some worked better than others for me. Now, I do want to recognize, because I did look into this a little bit and I had to mention this, I thought, what an impressive performance by Emilia Jones here. And I don't necessarily, by saying that, I don't necessarily mean that she should have got a Best Actress nom or something like that. But reading into this, she's 19 years old when this film actually, when they were in production, when they shot, or maybe even 18, right? 18 turning 19. She's British, right? So she had to learn an American accent for the film. She had to learn sign language because she's not actually a child of deaf adults. Or at least, I don't think so, but if she is, she didn't know all of sign language, so she had to learn sign language, and she had to, learn how to sing, and sing in the film. So to me, I mean, at 19 or 18 turning 19, that is just really impressive stuff. So again, not sure if that's Academy Award worthy, and she was good in the film, but she wasn't amazing. But just the fact that she put that much effort into this role, I think deserves a lot of recognition for that. I think Troy Kotsur and Marlee Matlin, are both great here. I don't know. I think as a supporting actor win for Troy Kotsur, I'm not quite sure about that one. Though I will say, out of all the nominees that I have seen in that category, I think he probably is the best. So, yeah, I guess he deserves to win. But, yeah, in a normal year, I'm just not sure if that performance is quite enough. I found myself kind of waiting in the movie for kind of a big scene to really hammer it home for me, and I never really got it, unfortunately. And that's just my opinion. I know some people really love him in that, and I think he's great. So there you go. And I also think Marlee Matlin is great, and I think she really could have got a nomination for this. I think she was kind of snubbed, if you will, or definitely missed out. So anyways, those are my thoughts on Coda. Definitely, a higher tier or higher up here in this bottom 5 films. But because of its cliche nature and that kind of thing, I really couldn't find myself putting it into my top 5 here on this list. Alright, so next then at number 5, we have Licorice Pizza. And this one I gave a 3.5 out of 5, so a bit of a step up then from the bottom 5. In the last few films I rated a 3. So this one I kind of have mixed feelings about, because some of my negatives for the film, or my kind of problems I had with it, are actually pretty significant at the end of the day when I kind of reflect back on it. But I found myself, by the time the film ended and kind of looking back on it, I really quite enjoyed it. But I don't know, like during the actual runtime of the film, and again, some of these problems I'll discuss in a second, really kind of bothered me. But by the end of the film, I don't know, I was just kind of able to forgive it a little bit because of the charm and just the kind of feeling I had about it. So I would say this one is probably my most kind of mixed feeling about it. I'm not sure, looking back on this maybe in a couple months, it might go down on this list. But to me, I don't know. There was just something about it that really clicked for me. Anyways, so to me, this is a fairly disjointed film. I think that's pretty obvious. Even going into it, that's pretty easy to see. It's more of like a hangout movie. Something like Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from a couple years ago comes to mind. There's really no tangible plot outside of that relationship between Alana and Gary, our two main characters, that kind of, weaves throughout the story, but through these kind of different situations and even different time periods with these characters. Not really big stretches of time, but you know what I mean, like just kind of different times in their lives within these, couple years that it covers. And so because of this, it makes for some really odd sequences throughout the film that really kind of feel out of place with the rest of the film. And two of those that come to mind are the sequences with Sean Penn and Bradley Cooper. So to me, these are two totally different sequences, because the Sean Penn one just seems very odd, and I just was not a fan of that one at all. I thought it was just very weird, really out of place, and just way too long, way too stretched out, and kind of paused this whole story. And again, we are following the dynamic there between Alana and Gary and through that sequence, but to me it was just a little too long, a little too indulgent for my liking. But Bradley Cooper, that sequence, every second that he's on the screen in this film is so great. And Bradley Cooper, all things on the table, is probably my favorite actor working today, at least in the movie world. Absolutely love him, and I'll talk about him in Nightmare Alley as we get to that as well. But he was just simply amazing in this whole sequence. I think he's only in about 10 minutes of the film, but this was easily the funniest sequence of any of these films this year, and just the overall, just the best sequence. Just so funny, and just the whole dynamic too of that character that he's playing and being kind of a creep, but then also really being funny. Like, you can really laugh at that and just kind of the ridiculousness of that character, and he plays it so well. You just, like, you hate him, but you're also laughing at him a little bit with him as well. So just a fantastic job from him. Can't praise him enough for that. And maybe just because of that sequence is one of the reasons that this one is so high on my list, I have to say. Really great stuff. And yeah, so genuinely funny and very charming to me. Like I kind of said, beyond just the sequence with Cooper, I think there's just some really good funny moments in the film. Again, laughed out loud quite a few times. And just kind of the humor here, I think, really worked and really fit in with especially the age gap between these two characters that the whole film was kind of based around. It just plays really well. The jokes that Gary makes are going to be different than Alana's, and that whole kind of dynamic there, I think, just brings a lot of charm and a lot of those comedic moments out. Skylar Gisondo also deserves a kind of a shout out or a kind of attention here, because he was so great. I really like him in the Vacation movie he was in a few years ago. Great in that, of course. Righteous Gemstones he's in, and his part in this was just really funny, and his whole kind of relationship with Alana, and when she brings him home to her parents, that stuff again was just really funny. Some really good comedy that really landed for me as well. So along with kind of the disjointed nature of the film, yeah, I think the ending to me is a little, I don't want to say problematic, but it's weird to me. It's very odd. And I think the whole age difference thing was just odd in itself. It's such a weird choice for Paul Thomas Anderson to make in writing this film. I think the whole film could have worked, maybe not as well, but could have worked perfectly fine if Gary was 18. I just don't quite understand it, and the ending there, I think that was just very odd and very kind of uncomfortable feeling when they kiss, and anyways, I guess I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, anyways, everybody's already seen these films most likely, but yeah, the ending, I'll just say, when they kiss, and I think that's kind of been teased anyways in the trailers and all that stuff, but I was just a little uncomfortable with that. I thought that was a little too far. And what I really liked about it, though, up until the ending and a little bit before the ending, was the whole tension of this, right? And kind of the will they, won't they kind of back and forth. And I thought PTA actually towed the line really well through the whole film up until that ending, which kind of ruined that whole kind of towing the line throughout the entire film. It ruined that dynamic and just made it kind of weird. So anyways, yeah, those are my thoughts on that. And I guess that's a pretty big negative overall with that. But again, up until the ending, I really liked that. So those are kind of my mixed feelings, mixed emotions on Licorice Pizza. But overall, that is the start then of my top 5. All right, so next up on the list then at number 4 is The Power of the Dog. And this one I gave a 3.5 out of 5 as well. So this one, and of course, this is probably the front runner for Best Picture. This and Coda maybe dueling out. We'll have to see, of course. And up until a couple weeks ago, I mean, this was like for sure, no doubt about it, going to be winning Best Picture. So it's kind of interesting how that has developed. But and it still may, of course. But to me, I thought this was just a well-made film overall. I would say one of the best made films. Like some of these on this list, especially towards the bottom, I just thought these weren't the best made films. I thought they were very messy. And even some of the other films I mentioned, like, I just don't think, they were just, I don't think they were polished quite enough as what they should have been or what they could have been, given the talent behind a lot of them. And so anyways, this one I thought is polished. I thought this is exactly what Jane Campion set out to make, and I think she accomplished that. So I do have to give a lot of credit to that, considering that, again, I mentioned that for other films that don't even meet that criteria for me on this list. So a well-made film, as I said, but I don't think it's as deep or as brilliant as it is made out to be. I think a lot of these, opinions, or I guess, views of the film, I think are really looking for something deeper in the film, and they're able to find it because the film is kind of ambiguous. It doesn't really have that kind of clear message that it kind of shoots right to you, right? It is ambiguous, and I do like that about it. But because of that, I think people look a lot deeper into this and find stuff that I don't think necessarily Jane Campion was actually trying to depict or really trying to portray in this story through, her, through her filmmaking process, right? So that's just my opinion to me. I think the story really meanders, especially the kind of middle part, or I guess the second act of this film, really meanders, and it's really just the same thing over and over and over again. Kirsten Dunst being drunk, and just the kind of whole dynamic there. It really goes nowhere. And even the first act of the film isn't as repetitive, but again, really not going anywhere. And it's really just the same, kind of things. We get more of kind of variety of scenes and settings in the first act, but I guess a little repetitive in kind of the dynamic between these characters. Now, I will say the third act and the ending, just the last kind of a few minutes, or I guess the last ending sequence of this one, are great. I really did like kind of the last act, and I really like when Cody Smith-McPhee's character and Benedict Cumberbatch's character, when they actually kind of get together and bond, or maybe actually they don't bond, maybe a one-sided bond, of course, as we see in the end. But that I thought was really powerful, and I thought that was the strong suit of this film. And yeah, I love the ending. I thought that was a really great ending, kind of a twist that you didn't see coming, and at the very last couple minutes of the film really, hit it home that it was Cody Smith-McPhee's, character, who was responsible for doing that. And yeah, it kind of makes a lot more sense as you reflect on the film, look back on it. It kind of all ties it up really nicely, and kind of brings it around. However, I still think it was kind of a big jump from the rest of the film because, again, we're meandering a lot of just repetition of the same stuff. And then all of a sudden that ending is kind of out there to me. It's kind of, again, I guess it's a shocking twist. That's the nature of it. But to me, it still felt sudden and kind of a big jump, whereas I thought maybe you could have led up a little bit more to that and developed that kind of tension and showed us that Cody Smith-McPhee's character felt that way, instead of just making it kind of that twist at the end, where we don't actually get much development. Instead, we're kind of forced to reflect back and try to think of scenes and moments that maybe foreshadowed what he was about to do. So again, that kind of just comes back to, I think people are looking into this, they want those moments, and so they are going to find them themselves, but I don't necessarily think Jane Campion, intentionally put those moments in there, and I think to me that's a negative of the film. So anyways, those are just kind of, I guess, my general thoughts on the ending there. Thought there could have been a bit more lead up to that and a little bit more development to kind of push that forward a little bit. And that's just my opinion there. Of course, the score and the cinematography are both great as well. I wanted to mention those while discussing this film. I thought the score was really great. I was actually really impressed with it, especially a couple of the, I guess, the themes, I guess, or kind of, I forget, I guess, like the cuts, whatever, anyways, the 2-3 minute kind of sequences of songs or themes. Two of them in particular, with Benedict Cumberbatch's character, I guess his kind of theme, I thought were really, really excellent. Just really great. Kind of that hard strumming of the guitar as he kind of came in. I thought that was really well done. And the cinematography just looks really beautiful. Really great stuff there as well. And one last thing I will say, commenting on this one, because I know it got 4 acting nominations, so I want to acknowledge that real quick. Cody Smith-McPhee, I thought, was good in this. I'm just not sure that he needed an Oscar nomination, and definitely not a win. for this performance. I thought it stood out. It was memorable, but I'm not sure that it was Oscar worthy. Kirsten Dunst, I thought, was Oscar worthy. She was really great, but not a lot of range here. She really just plays the same character. Again, kind of goes back to the repetitive nature of her character and her dynamic with her son and Benedict Cumberbatch's character. Jesse Plemons, I'm one of the biggest Jesse Plemons fans. I think his stuff in Breaking Bad and even El Camino is just simply like amazing, just fantastic stuff. I actually think in El Camino, I think he gives a better performance in that film than he does here. Again, just not a lot of range. I'm really glad that he got an Oscar nomination, though. Really happy for him, but I'm just not sure that he really deserved it all the way. And lastly is Benedict Cumberbatch. I do really like him in the film, and I think he is definitely Oscar worthy. I think he's really great. But ultimately, I think he was kind of miscast for this film. I just don't quite understand the decision to have a British guy who's played Sherlock Holmes and all that stuff. And again, he does a great job in the film. I don't want to take that away from him. But just right off the bat, he's such a memorable name. A lot of people know him. You know, again, he's played Sherlock Holmes. He's a really kind of, you know, well-known British actor. And so for him to come in and play this kind of rancher, you do buy into it really quickly, but right off the bat at the start of the film, I just kind of thought to myself, you know, could they have found somebody a little bit more kind of that kind of fits that world a little bit more than Cumberbatch? But those are just kind of my thoughts. Again, I think he really kind of put that to rest really quickly in the film. I think he was great, but maybe just something to think about after watching this one. Alright, so next then at number 3, we have Dune. And this one I also gave a 3.5 out of 5. So to me, this does transcend the sci-fi kind of fantasy blockbuster genre. And of course, that's one of the main reasons it's nominated at the Oscars for Best Picture. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't even be close. But not by much. I think a lot of other people think it does transcend maybe a little bit more than what I do. To me, I think it was still filled with some cliches here, some surface level writing for these characters, especially some of the dialogue I thought was just not really creative, and some of the stuff in here, just the dynamics between the characters. Jason Momoa's character, for instance, I thought he did a great job, but to me that's a pretty cliche character that we've seen in a lot of other films. So anyways, that's just my kind of thoughts on this. But yes, I do think it transcends the genre. I think it does deserve to be in the conversation at the Oscars, especially Denis Villeneuve behind it, and his creative kind of artistic approach to the film, I think really warrants that kind of Oscar buzz. I will say also, I'm just not a huge fan of this Dune universe. Obviously, I've never read the books before. I wasn't really familiar with it before this film. But yeah, just not a huge fan of it. I really didn't connect to that universe and the different technology that they're using, but it's still supposed to be kind of a ancient world. Anyways, I'm not going to comment anymore because I'm really ignorant on the topic. You know, obviously I don't know all of it, but to me, I just didn't connect with that universe right away, and so that's something that also kind of took me out of it just from a subjective standpoint. But the technical aspects of this film are simply undeniable, right? The score from Hans Zimmer, really great, and really great to see him win. Though I think he's done better scores in the past. I think his Interstellar score is one of the best ever that I've ever heard. Really great. So anyways, great to see him win this one. Definitely deserved. Cinematography I thought was really excellent. The sound, maybe the best sound for a film like this that I've seen in quite a while. And the direction choices. I thought Denis Villeneuve, again, brought a really kind of artistic approach to this film that really made it stand out. And I thought that really, you know, kind of helped it transcend that genre of these other kind of blockbuster films that are going for the similar style. So anyways, those are my thoughts on Dune. But ultimately, some of those cliches and that stuff, to me, kind of holds this back from these top 2 films up next. All right, so next up at number 2, our runner-up for this list is going to be Drive My Car. And this one I gave a 3.5 out of 5. But to me, I really could go back and forth with this one. Maybe give it a 4. But for now, I'll stick to 3.5 out of 5. This one I really quite liked. And I kind of knew I would going into it. It was a bit more unconventional while compared to these other nominees on this list. And I have to say, this is maybe the most dense, dialogue-heavy film that I've ever seen. I can't recall anything that has been on this level with just the sheer amount of dialogue that is in the film and just the really kind of deep, like long monologues. There's so many long monologues just covering such deep themes and really going into these relationships and the dynamics. It really is like a novel put to screen. That's really what it feels like. And I think that's exactly what Hamaguchi was going for with the film. So really great job. He definitely accomplished that. And I'm not sure. I'm not necessarily saying that's a negative. I'm not necessarily, I guess, saying it's a positive, though I think it's probably closer on that side of the thing than a negative. But just kind of an observation I had, and just something coming out of it. So obviously it is long, and you know, because of that, it is long. The opening credits for the film are 45 or 42 minutes in to this film, which is just insane. I've never seen something like that. So it is very long, but I will say, I think it's still paced actually very well. It really does keep you engaged. I didn't find myself at really any time in the runtime here, noticing the length. Obviously, at the end of it, I did. How many hours I just spent watching it. But it really does keep you engaged. I really never felt at any point like I was kind of taken out of it because of its length. So just a really interesting story overall, right? With some really deep messages. To me, that just didn't land for me all the way. I think this film really takes at least 2 or 3 watches, and I've only watched it once. To really get everything here. One of the main themes to me that I really enjoyed, really connected with, was kind of this mystery that's kind of masking all these characters in this world of the film. And I think it is kind of trying to comment on that. And you really have to learn about the person and go past just what they are on the surface, because all these characters in the film all have different secrets that come out, and that's kind of just a general theme of it. It's like trying to get to know people, and especially playing on the languages of the film, trying to get people, communicate, make contact with other people that may not speak the same language. So a lot of those themes, again, like very deep themes, and again, some I connected with, but some I just really missed. So yeah, definitely would be better on another rewatch. And I really like the patient direction here from Hamaguchi. A lot of these shots last nice and long, and we kind of just slowly kind of fade through the film as it goes on. It's like literally the complete opposite of Don't Look Up, right? Don't Look Up, literally it cuts in the middle of scenes and stuff, like middle of dialogue. And this film just really lets it breathe fully. Every scene where there's a big monologue or something like that and it ends, then we get at least 30 seconds or so of just shots of usually like wide shots or kind of longer shots that the characters are still in, but we kind of pull away from them, and then we're just driving in the car, or we're looking at the scenery around them. Just a really great stuff there, which of course added to the length. I get that, but I really respected that. I thought it was great. I also think that the lead actor here in this one, Nishijima, I thought he was great, and I think he should have got nominated for a lead actor nomination here. I think he was better than some of the nominees from that list, in my opinion. I thought he was really great in this one. Emotional moments for this, and just a lot of monologues, a lot of dialogue that he really had to nail, and he nailed every minute of it. So really great stuff there, and definitely a really great film, and definitely belongs at number 2 on this list. All right, so we have reached the top spot. Number 1 is going to be Nightmare Alley. This one, I gave a 4 out of 5, which is the highest rating here. the only one above a 3.5 on this list. Though Drive My Car is probably just very, very close. But I will say Nightmare Alley, it's not very close between the number one spot. This is another stylistic masterpiece from Guillermo del Toro. And to me, really one of the main reasons that this is at number one for me, because I am giving it a 4 out of 5. It's not a perfect film to me. Whereas, I gave 2 years ago, I gave 3 films a 5 out of 5. Last year, I gave like 2 4.5s. So yeah, it's not on that level to me. But again, one of the main reasons it's here is because to me is the most artistic, creative, just stylistic film of any of these nominees. And the only one that really comes close is Drive My Car, which is my number 2. So you see where I'm going with this, right? I think Guillermo del Toro should have been nominated for director, no doubt about it. Even if this film doesn't work, completely well for everybody, and it's not a perfect film, I completely agree with that. I think he deserved it just for the sheer creativity and just stylistic commitment that he puts into every one of his films. And this one is no exception. Everything from the cinematography to the score to the production design, everything, even in the acting choices that these actors make, probably, being instructed by Del Toro, everything is committed to this one artistic style. I guess in this film it's more noir. Of course, Shape of Water, it was more that kind of creature, mysterious world and that, and you get a little bit of that in this film as well. Of course, yeah, I think Shape of Water is a better film, more stylistic than this one. But I think you can make that comparison because it's just that good. The cinematography here, especially towards the end of the film, that one specific scene that is also in the trailer, when Bradley Cooper is running through the snowstorm at the end, that is one of the best shots I think I maybe have ever seen. Just so beautiful and just stunning. And again, really captures that environment and that style that Del Toro captured in the entire film, right from the beginning frame to the very last frame. So I can't say enough about that in this film. I think it's the strongest aspect of it for sure. Now, in the little comparison to Shape of Water that I just made, I think this film lacks that kind of inspiration, I would say, or that really clear message behind it, while compared to his past films like Shape of Water. And I really think it's just that he wanted to adapt this movie. Of course, this is based on a previous movie from the 1940s, I believe. And it really does come across like that. It really does come across that he's adapting a story rather than coming up with something original and really having something to say, right? In that he definitely did with Shape of Water, Pan's Labyrinth, all of his best films. It always feels like he has something to say, a really clear message that he's trying to get across. And in this one, I just thought it was a little more uninspired compared to those. And in that way, some of the film did kind of just feel like we're just going about, these events. And again, it just felt a little more uninspired than his past films to me. But again, the style and all the stuff is still very much there. So I wouldn't say that he cheapened out or anything like that. I think he really was committed to it, but I'm just saying the story itself that he was going off of wasn't from that kind of same place, if that makes sense. To me, I really didn't like the ending. I did like the ending, but the very last scene of the film, or kind of the very last minute or two of the film, that kind of twist where it kind of twists everything on its end, brings it all full circle, and of course Bradley Cooper's character is now in the place that he kind of witnessed at the beginning of the film. I thought it was just too on the nose to me. I thought it was too obvious. And again, that's just something that comes from adapting the story. Of course, you kind of have to follow the same things. And to me, I just felt like in the context of this film, it just didn't work quite as well as I'm sure it did in the 1940s version. And I could be totally wrong. Maybe that isn't how the original ended. But to me, I just felt like it was on the nose. It was a little bit too much and a little bit too convenient for how that whole plot wrapped up. Though the whole ending sequence with Richard Jenkins and that whole stuff, absolutely loved it. And again, the cinematography for that entire sequence is just some of the best I've seen in quite a long time. So really great stuff. Bradley Cooper, I thought, was great in this. Like I said, I would praise him, a little bit earlier. My favorite actor working today in movies, and he was great in this. It is a little more of a subtle performance, though. I didn't expect him to get nominated for it, but he's just so perfect and exactly what Del Toro was asking of him here. I thought it was just excellent overall. And obviously, Cate Blanchett. I thought she could have got nominated. I thought she was very good as well as the therapist, and especially in those ending scenes where she's kind of, gets the better of him or makes that twist on Bradley Cooper's character. I thought she was really great in those scenes. So, anyways, that'll do it for my number one there for Nightmare Alley. Again, not a perfect film. I had a few problems with it. I felt like it wasn't maybe as inspired as some of his previous films, like Shape of Water, but I thought it's still the most creative, artistically committed film out of all these nominees, and that's something I really respect and really enjoyed while watching the film. So there you have it. Nightmare Alley is my number one for this year's nominees. Alright, so that just about wraps up my ranking for the 10 Best Picture nominees for this year's Oscars. Really excited for tonight to see the ceremony and see what wins all these awards and how the films that I've talked about here, perform. Obviously, Nightmare Alley is my favorite on the list, so, obviously I'll be rooting for that for whatever it can win. Probably unlikely that it wins picture, of course, but I'll be silently rooting for it while watching. But anyways, yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to the winners, of course, looking forward to the surprises, all that stuff. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the Oscars, but especially these kind of Best Picture movies. What do you rank them as? Or if you haven't seen them all, what are your thoughts on the ones you have seen? You liked them, you didn't like them, anything like that. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Really looking forward to discussing with you guys and kind of hearing your thoughts and discussing these. So anyways, with all that being said, looking forward to the ceremony tonight. Definitely be tuned in and definitely putting out some more reviews. Do my recap for the month as well, coming up soon in the next few days. So definitely look out for that. But anyways, once again, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next video.